The following was recorded at socialmedia.org's Brands Only Summit, the conference for social media leaders at the world's greatest brands. Here is Adam Singer from Google with his presentation, People, Process, Platform, a simple way to think about your digital analytics practice.
I like to start presenting just like one of my friends, Peter, and have a slide, why are you listening to me? In addition to being an analytics advocate at Google, I previously was on the agency side. I build websites for fun and profit and look at data all the time. So I don't just talk about analytics and I don't just tell people how to be a better analyst, but I'm also one myself. So I'm going to start a little bit talking about mobile. I know that this is a social conference, but really social and mobile are the same thing for most people. Just because we're community managers and we're involved in social and we're using, two monitors in our workstation to update the internet, our users aren't doing that. That's just the business side of things. That's just professionals. And so, we're checking our devices quite a bit in addition to just web. In fact, a lot of users are now going mobile only. We see number of devices increasing rapidly, and obviously the majority of that are mobile devices as we get tablets and smartphones, and basically for a lot of people, especially in developing countries, it's become a mobile only world for many, and this is their first experience in their intro to computing. Your users are also multi-screen, and so really the most successful companies that I talk to in Silicon Valley, in New York, and even in other places that aren't technology hubs, these are companies that are thinking about an experience across screens. They're thinking about how they're going to serve their users wherever they are. And really for us as marketers and as social analysts and people involved with the business side of things, we need to think about how mobile is spurring new types of conversions. And so this could be a conversion from an app. This could be a conversion via click-to-call, a web ad. This could be from cross-device, looking at your brand or interacting with you on mobile, and then coming back later via your website and actually making a purchase, right? We need to think about all of this stuff and think about the multi-screen world. So I started with that just to level set. Hopefully you guys haven't been beaten over the head too much with how mobile is important from us, from Facebook, from other companies that are really pushing mobile, but it is the new reality, right? We see mobile-only companies like Uber that are worth over $60 billion coming up very quickly, and the adoption of these new companies has been insane. But anyway, let's talk about social and let's talk about measurement. So I know a lot of marketers stress about data, and I don't think you should. I think if you think data is a first world problem that, oh no, they're making us measure our results, you should quickly get to the point where you're a success kid and you're like, yes, because I'm measuring, I was able to get 50% more budget. So don't stress about data, have a plan, and you guys can do it. You guys are all part of this great organization, so you're not marketers that I'm worried about that are not measuring. So today I'm gonna quickly touch on three things, people, process, and platform with analytics. Let's dive right into people. There's kind of a 90-10 rule with people in digital analytics. And so what I mean by that is for every $10 you spend on tools and technologies, you should be spending $90 on your people. If you think that technology is going to solve all of your problems or software is going to solve all your problems, you're going to have a bad time. There is no easy button in Google Analytics. I've talked with the engineering team and I've asked them about an easy button. It's not gonna happen anytime soon. But that's a good thing for us, right? We wouldn't have jobs if everything was just done via one button that would tell us what our data and what our analytics says we should do, right? That's part of our jobs, and that's great. We don't want something that makes it so easy we're not necessary. So talking about people and building your team, right? Because all of you guys are building teams or part of teams, or even if a new team member comes in and you're not the one doing the hiring, you still get a say, right? So some skills to look for in your team members: they have to have business acumen. They have to be able to talk to the C-suite. They have to be able to get out of their own jargon and be able to use data to persuade people in a way that makes sense. You have to have nerd skills. You have to understand how to use APIs. You have to, if you need to set up some automation for your measurement or build some dashboards, you have to be able to do that, or know enough to be dangerous and manage a consultancy or manage your engineering team to be able to handle that for you. And also must be constantly learning. This one is really important for us in social, right? There's always new platforms, there's always new metrics. Back when I was a consultant, a lot of clients freaked out about clout scores. They wanted to raise their clout scores. And I laughed at these people because I put on my analyst hat and I looked at everything and I realized, wow, this is a bullshit metric. Look how easy this is to gain. It's just a terrible, terrible metric. And so, I have my own sites that I work on as sandbox projects, and I know what metrics mean because I test them and I test new tools. So anyway, that's a really important thing that I look for in new team members. I want to say a PhD is not required for hiring awesome people for your analytics practice. I got to meet the director of business intelligence at Caesars. They're an awesome data-driven company. They know everything from the price elasticity, what they can charge for their games on the casino floor at any given time. That's why when you go into a casino a little bit earlier, it's cheaper to play blackjack versus you have to sit down for over $50 later at night, to what they should charge for their hotel rooms per night. And they have all this economic modeling. They bring macro indicators into effect to understand what they should charge for rooms, not just competitive metrics, right? So they have data scientists there. I got to meet a few of their data scientists that they hired them from biotech companies that don't work out. They hired these companies' data scientists because they're doing the same types of analysis. But for us, we don't need PhDs. And the reason is you're never going to get perfect data online, and a lot of data scientists are uncomfortable working with imperfect data. And it turns out some kid who had built an app in his free time and just looked at all the metrics and looked at how he was getting users, and it wasn't perfect, but he was able to use that information. Turns out he's a better analyst and he's a better decision maker than someone who may have taken 100 stats classes and is a data scientist, right? Because he's comfortable working in this space where everything's not perfect. So PhD isn't required. And when you do hire a data scientist, you need to sort of break them of their rigidity, right? Because it's not clinical data. We're not in a lab. Some sample questions I like to ask new team members just to help. We have varying groups that need to get data and insights. How would you do that efficiently? How would you break down time spent on analytics between reporting, capture, and analysis, right? So obviously, we would want the most possible time on analysis and much less on reporting and almost nothing on capture, right? Capture should be easy. It's low-level work. We can pay a consultant to do it and get it out of the way. And then how do you plan to be data-driven in improving our online marketing efforts? Simple questions like that. You don't need to get fancy and ask them to solve questions like, how many windows are there on Seattle hotels? Don't ask stuff like that. You're just going to annoy people. Getting external help while building a team, I think that this is a great route to go. We have a group of what we call analytics certified partners at Google that we certify. And so if you want to get help along the way and hire a consultant, that's a great thing. Get them to teach your team. Get them to do all of the legwork of maybe building all your reports and getting all your data capture, and then your team can do the analysis and the creative work. So let's go on a process. I like this Venn diagram, or I like this flow chart. Do you have a problem in your life? No? Then don't worry. Easy. If you do, can you do something about it? Yes? No? Well, either way, don't worry. So a winning process versus not. These are two sites that I market in my free time just to, so in addition to being a Googler, I run some AdSense sites, which is a great thing, right? You always want to actually work on the types of projects that your users work on, no matter what company you're at. I think this is important. So for one of my sites that I don't necessarily do a good job marketing, it's kind of, in terms of organic traffic, it's kind of floundering. And then for another site that I do a good job on, oh my God, we need to duplicate this. So obviously I would want to look at the process and what I'm doing for my winning site versus my not winning site. So hopefully, if you have sub-brands, look at how they're doing, see what is working well, and try to duplicate that for your other brands and the other products that you work on. So process, let's talk about collection. You want to collect what matters. If you aren't collecting data, and the previous speaker talked about this in the other room, then you're not going to be able to actually report on it and create segments and actually come to conclusions about that data. So I think you guys get this. And these are some sample things you would collect for an app. You'd have events like users logged in. You'd have transactions someone bought. This is for an app that's a game, a new skin for a new character or additional lives. And then custom dimensions, these could be things like achievements if you had a game. But if you did nothing else, you guys, I think, get the data capture thing. Capture macro conversions and micro conversions. So the visual is self-explanatory. Macro conversions would be marriage. Your customers, obviously, you want them to marry you. You want this great love affair with your users. But you don't ask people to marry you on the first date. Has anyone in here asked their partner to marry them on the first date? I actually asked that question to another group, and I got a hand, which was kind of fun. But you want to romance your customers on the way. Like, what are those interactions leading up to becoming a customer or becoming a repeat customer? You know, customer lifetime value, that's really important. And so micro conversions or dating, those would be things like maybe they clicked on a link from a tweet to your video product demo. Maybe they joined a member of your community. Maybe they signed up to an email newsletter, right? These are the things that would lead up to eventually making a purchase, or eventually, what is that economic outcome for our brands? And we all want to know that, right? So we can qualify our efforts. And realize social is not direct marketing. Any executive who is obsessing over you getting direct revenue from social, they don't know what they're talking about. We need to educate them. And so we can tell them about all these great micro interactions that lead up to that user love and that person deciding to choose us. And this is important. We're seeing at Google that users interact with a brand about 4.2 times over a 2-day period on average before they actually convert. And so that's from Google Analytics, like macro data. We have a macro view of all users. But there's independent research that says people are, interacting with brands up to even 14 times before they make a purchase. So that's really important to take a look at. I'm going to go a little faster because we don't have too much time. Create a process for data requests. This is important. People need to know from you how they're going to get data. So maybe create an email address at your company. That way people aren't asking random people on your team for data. And ask the essential info. What data do you need? What format? When do you need it? All of these questions that you're going to come back with when someone asks you for a certain report or certain insights about your users. And so an easy way to do this, create a form, right? Figure out all the things you want and tell people, even your VP, you have to fill out this form and you have to ask for all of these things and for me to get data for you. And when you do that, your life becomes a lot easier. Also, specify a time frame. Say, I need at least a week for this type of requests. We don't have fire drills in analyst world. Someone else's emergency isn't our emergency. So manage that process and make sure people know. Education, that kind of falls under this too. Teach everyone to use data. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically, digital insights are beneficial to your whole company, right? Not just marketers. Imagine in social, you answer a recurring question 5 times. You're like, wow, this new product, a lot of people are asking the same thing. So then you make a help center page for it on your company site. Lo and behold, that question isn't asked anymore in social. No one is calling your call center anymore because there's a page answering that. And so that insight could have come from social. And then you can measure the amount of traffic to that page. And then you've alleviated this cost from your call center. So those insights, as long as they're not trapped in your silo and you're thinking about using social data in this way, you can start to use it to improve business, not just from a revenue generating standpoint, but perhaps a cost saving standpoint. One other example here, one of our power users, Zillow, they're one of our Google Analytics premium users, and they work with one of our certified partners. They're great because they have everyone come in for meetings from product design to marketing to sales, and they actually do a good job socializing data. Creating best practices and theory training docs. These are docs I can share with you guys after and tweet out. But basically, have a place on your company intranet people can go to get up to speed. I would also ask for input and evangelize the process. So we have a sample roadmap that you can grab. And this is a roadmap for testing and optimization. And knowing that culture shift is an ongoing process, right? You can't have big wins overnight. You have to work on making your company be more data-driven because it's not in the DNA of most large brands, unfortunately, not yet. And so bring everyone together, start doing trainings, and start to move people and make your culture shift. One thing maybe on this side is when you share your results, do make a deck, get out of Google Docs, get out of Tableau, get out of PowerPoint, and make it visual for people, call it out. I'll quickly go through platform. I think you guys are already pretty familiar with Google Analytics. One thing I want to say is you want to collect data from all of your data sources, even things like even offline conversions. And so if I'm Disney World, and I have my little Mickey trackers. So with Google Analytics, if they wanted, they could actually measure when you badge into your room or when you go on a certain ride. I'm sure they're measuring this in a proprietary system, but the point is you don't need to be a $100 billion brand. We actually let you do this in the free version of Google Analytics. So if you can connect it to the internet, you can measure it. One of my users in Australia had a thesis. They wanted to know internally if caffeine intake from their team increased productivity. So they plugged their coffee maker and Basecamp, their project management software, into Google Analytics to try to correlate those things. It actually did lead to increased productivity. They did this for fun, but the point is we want to make it really flexible for you to measure everything. And so if you're an airline, you want to measure, when that person actually checks in for their flight to when they buy something in flight to when they tweet about you later, right? You want to know that whole story on that user. Across screens, this is something we recognize at Google is really important. And so also in the new version of Google Analytics, we do have multi-screen reports. We let you see an overlap of what devices people are using. And so this is powerful if you were, if you were Eurorail and people were, maybe looking up people were looking up tickets on their cell phone and then purchasing later when they got home for a new trip somewhere. That would be that would be a sequence you'd want to see. In addition, data-driven attribution is really important. We just acquired a company called Odometry to build out our attribution, which shows everything from web, search, social, to also offline, TV, your PR, and direct mail, and everything in between. And so data-driven attribution in particular is important, not just knowing that customer journey, but then also saying, wow, so display or social or some other touch point in this mix is actually increasing conversions by 50%, but by 2 to 3, right? So that's a really important thing to be able to see. APIs for taking your data out into your own data warehouse, into your own reporting tools. We have APIs in analytics. Most of the major analytics tools do. If it doesn't have an API, don't use it, because you want that data to be yours, right? You want to be able to do whatever you want with it. And so we actually now let you integrate that data very easily with Google Sheets. You don't have to know how to code or program, and so that's kind of a nice thing. If you want your data out of Google Analytics into Sheets to be able to pair with other data, that's a great way to do it. You can use there's any number of tools like Domo to build custom dashboards as well, and you don't have to actually go in and do anything manually. We also have a whole app gallery to beautify your data. So this is an example of visually created a tool that will turn your Google Analytics data into an infographic. I'm not sure this one is super useful other than a novelty, but it just shows an example of what people are doing with analytics data. And so there's a whole bunch of apps that will help you do everything from connect your call center to Google Analytics to connect your social marketing to Google Analytics. So hopefully you're bringing that data together and social isn't just living off in its own island. We also have connectors that let you easily put your data into data visualization apps. So this is an example of Google Analytics data in Tableau. If you want those scatter charts or you want to do anything really interesting and bring together lots of different data sets, Tableau is very cool. And of course, in GA, we have custom dashboard segments that you can share with your team and stakeholders. You can build a social dashboard for your site and just get a glance of your social metrics. And so, yeah, we try to make it really flexible on the platform side. Just make sure that you choose the right platform for your brand. You make sure that you choose one that has everything that you need up front, because it's a pain to have to switch providers. You really don't want to have to do that. Anyway, that was just a quick overview, some resources. One I would really recommend you take a look at. I help work on an analytics MOOC. That's a massive open online course where you can take specific, in-depth, several hour-long courses. They include videos and training exercises. I'd recommend them for your team. We have one on mobile now. We have one on tag management, which is a very important topic. We have one on e-commerce, which is important to a lot of you. So check those out. I think they're applicable if you're using our product or not. And then if you have questions, you can talk to me after or ping me anytime on Twitter. Always happy to help you with GA questions or any others that you may have. So I think we have time for a few live questions.
Round of applause. Thank you. Thank you first. Lots of good information there. We do have an opportunity for questions. So if you do, please raise your hand. We'll make sure that Jeff or Kristen will bring the microphone around to you. And again, we're recording all this, so please start with your name and company as a matter of politeness, but also as a matter of posterity. And we'll get the microphone over your way. When you brought up about clout, and it was a good adjective to describe the algorithm, I guess, that clout puts together. When it first came out, boy, there was a lot of excitement around it. I think number one, because, well, it's somebody else is doing the work to come up with a measurement, good or bad, but it's also a way to distill to one number. Because you talked here about different ways to level out, different ways to measure different kinds of things. And sometimes I think for a lot of people in this room, that can feel overwhelming, right quick. Well, we've got one quick answer, even if it might not be a great one, or we've got to figure out the time. Because you talk about developing the team and figuring out, the MOOC is excellent to get started on something like this. How is it that we can, as leaders, get to a spot where we can teach, where we can train, where we know what it is to look for, sure, rather than just say, all right, I need you to take care of metrics, you go do these things?
Yeah, well, I think cloud is a good teaching moment for us, that there are no easy answers. So looking for a singular metric to define your success is especially one that is, not very important, because you could have Robert Scoble tweet something and he tweets so much and shares so much. Sure, he's super influential, but if someone with a lot less followers but a lot stronger connections tweets something, especially for if you're Boeing and you sell jets, right, you might reach the right 5 people and make the sale. So it's just such a nuanced metric. I would say to stay up to date and informed and make good decisions for your team, you need your own sandbox project. So whatever analysis tools you're using for your brand, use it, have your own sandbox version of it, play around, get your team to be able to use it to sort of kick the tires on things, not with live data, build filters, build segments, build dashboards in an environment that they can't break things. And I think people will be more apt to try things out and learn, because I'm a big believer on learning by doing. So I think that's an important way to learn.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And one of the dynamics that we've learned from this community is it's also good to be vulnerable sometimes. Hey, I don't have all the answers,
yeah,
but that might be a good way to get everybody to learn together if you're in this as a group exercise.
Absolutely, and get help, right? We have such great consultants out there. We have a group of certified partners that we qualify, but whether you hire one of our certified partners or someone else, I think it's a great thing to get help and get a roadmap, right? Just make sure you have a plan and steps in place.
Excellent,
yeah.
Excellent. What about early metrics maybe to look for? Are there, because I know from our previous World 2, we'll get to the question in just a moment, from previous World 2, how to get, are there areas that you've seen to turn early results around, to get everybody on board? Hey, look, we can benchmark, we can see where there's an uptick here because of the effort that we're putting in to sort of accelerate the education process?
Well, if you're not doing simple things like campaign tagging links, that would be a really simple way, like a first actionable step. If you're not measuring anything in social, that would be the first thing that I would do. So really easy. I think everyone here is probably doing that, we hope.
Excellent. Yes. Our first question, Katie?
Hi, this is Katie from Thrivent. I love the comment that social media is not direct marketing, so don't expect the same results. But can you offer any nuggets or insights or things that you found with benchmarking around attribution that you can give to social media as a channel versus other channels?
That's a great question. And so we actually did some research, because we have quite a few people opted into data sharing with Google Analytics, and we have quite a bit of the traffic on the internet goes through our product. So we actually published some research on where social plays in terms of that buyer journey. And we saw that social is very much what everyone knows, part of the upper funnel of the buyer journey. So typically social is more tied to that awareness phase, right? You're either just hearing about someone, or you're just hearing that this brand has an announcement because you follow them. And so typically that would follow up if we're doing our jobs with something like remarketing, which is great, right? You get someone to come to your website for something in social that was really shareable, and then you use remarketing to have them to have more direct response ads to them later. And then social can get that credit of first bringing someone to your website so you could actually start to run remarketing ads against them. And so, really just educating how social fits. And it's, this is the cliched analogy of it's a cocktail party or whatnot. If you need to explain it to a CEO who doesn't get it, you don't want to be the one in there who's trying to sell something and really break up the party. You'd want to have something that makes sense for people and adds value. So there's look at our customer journey tool. If you search for Google Analytics customer journey tool, we actually share that data by industry. We share that data by location and a couple other ways you can break that down. And that's from I think about 12 million accounts. So it's pretty good, statistically significant data.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Katie. Another question from the back corner?
Okay. Hey, Drew Favreau from Boeing. We do sell jets, but we also recruit people.
So cool.
And we also sell things to our Boeing stores, and that's actually how we use Google DoubleClick tags. My question is about the multiple screen phenomenon to complete a transaction. And the question is, can you talk a little bit more about that? One of the big gaps that we have as we're using DoubleClick is we know a lot of users experience our social content on their mobile devices, and then we lose them when they go to desktop. So can you talk about how Google is bridging that?
Sure. So the way that the multi-screen tracking works is your users must be logged in on each device in order to see that whole journey as one user. And so, but what you can do is if someone were to check you out on mobile and they were logged in, and then later on came back to your website and then made a purchase, once they log in, you can actually do something called session stitching, which if you send me an email, I can help you out with. But you could actually tie that session together once they logged in. So, the challenge, of course, then is, well, how would you get them to always be logged in both places? And I would recommend having something like an app where it's worth their while to have you on their mobile device. And that's kind of the holy grail of mobile marketing, is to have a successful app. So Skull Candy is a great example of this. Our headphone company, and they have an app which is actually for surfers and outside people and adventure seekers, and they have weather data and surf data, and all of this aggregated in this really useful app for what they've identified as their target demographic. And then when these people come back online later and make a purchase, they know that user's also checking out promotions on their app. So that's one way around it. But you really just need to get people to log in, because obviously that's anonymized data, and you're just not going to get that unless that person's logged in.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Outstanding. How about a round of applause for Adam Singer, Analytics Advocate?
The presentation you just watched was recorded at socialmedia.org's 2016 Brands Only Summit. Socialmedia.org is the community for social media leaders at the world's greatest brands. Members help one another by sharing best practices, actionable advice, and solutions to issues they can't talk about anywhere else, all in our vendor-free environment. If you're leading social media at a major brand, you belong in this family. Join us at socialmedia.org.